Welcome back to another Saxton podcast. It's been about a month since we spoke with you, but we're back in time for another major. How you doing, Deuce?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Trying to stay out of the scorching heat.
Yes. Middle of the summer. It's not the best time for sports. It's blazingly hot outside, but finally something to look forward to this week with the third major of the year.
And I don't think I can complain about the coverage for this one. It looks like Golf Channel picks it up at 1:30 in the morning, and it looks like it's going to be on run until Sunday.
I believe they're going to try to show every single shot from start to end, so there should be no complaining about Jim Nance talking or Butler Cabin or anything like that. So it looks like it might be refreshing.
Now, NBC has it this year, so we'll get Hicks and Johnny Miller for the first time in my lifetime, I think, for the British. And
I am excited to hear Johnny Miller, and also we get Mike Tirico making his debut for NBC Sports.
That is correct. So let's get right into it. Where are they playing at?
This is at Royal Troon, right outside of Glasgow, Scotland. Par 71, 7,190 yards, so pretty short. Traditional links course, goes out and comes back in, right along the water. And like most links, it is defended by the weather. So if the weather is nice, the course will play very easy since it's so short. If they get a normal Scottish day with the wind blowing and some rain, it will play tough, especially with the bunkers being the other main defense of the course.
Well, then, the most important question, what do you have on tap for the weather?
So, it's really tricky to forecast over there. Obviously, it's the old saying, it could be summer day, and then 5 minutes later it looks like winter. So, very tough to forecast there. You can't ever really rely on the forecasts from the weather people over there. But right now it looks like Thursday, day one, looks pretty good. Temperatures in the 60s, winds only 5 to 10, only a 20% chance of rain. So I think you'll see some good scoring on Thursday. And as the days go on, the wind starts to pick up and the chance of rain increases. Friday especially, it looks like 90% chance of rain. Winds 10 to 20 on Friday and 15 to 25 on Saturday. So wind will be a factor, it looks like. Now, the key, I think, to the weather is the direction of the wind, especially at Troon. If the wind comes from the north, it is straight into the player's face the whole back nine. That's the tough wind. That's the prevailing wind. If the wind switches to the south, that means the back nine will play easier, and the front nine is short either way. So if we get a south wind, which is the opposite of the prevailing wind, then I think you'll see some really low scores all week.
Knowing what you just said about the weather, will there be an advantage if you go out morning late or late morning, Thursday, Friday?
You always want to go out early, I think, in an open, but I don't see a clear advantage at this point. There probably will be an advantage like there usually is, but right now it looks fairly minimal at this point.
Again, with the weather being taken into consideration, who does the course set up for?
Yeah, so that's the key is the weather. If the wind lays down or is blowing from the south, which is the opposite of the prevailing wind, I really like the big hitters. The course will play very short if that's the wind direction, and they will be able to take a lot of those fairway bunkers out of play. Now, if it's regular wind conditions and out of the north, then guys like Zach Johnson, Graham McDowell, the plotters, the tacticians, the guys that they'll all be hitting to the same spots really in between the bunkers. Those are the guys that will have success. So I think you'll see two different leaderboards depending on the wind.
You think we will see guys trying to overpower it, such as DJ, Jason Day, Rory?
Yes, I do think you'll see some guys get aggressive. From the early practice rounds that I've seen, it looks fairly soft. The greens have some bounce into them, but it's sort of green. The rough is up. You obviously can't hit it into the gorse or the fescue, but I think you'll see some guys if the wind is not coming into their face, especially on the front nine. I think you'll see the first 5 or 6 holes played fairly easy, no matter what the weather is. I think you'll see some guys attack with the driver on that front nine.
What has the players been saying about the course and the setup?
Basically the same thing I just described. I think it's in great condition. They've made a couple little changes, but nothing major since the last time they held it there. I think you can score there. I think players like the open courses that are traditional lengths, where it's 100% dependent on weather. It gives the guys a chance to score if the weather lays down, but if the weather's up, it's going to play hard no matter what. So I think guys respect that type of traditional open layout.
Guys you're currently looking at?
So a couple guys I like of the big names. Obviously, you have to include DJ in that conversation. The guy seemed to have figured it out. He looked at his stats from 3 or 4 years ago. He saw that the huge weakness in his game was the 50 to 125 wedge shot. He is now currently first on tour in that distance, proximity to the hole, so he has revamped the game. His driver is an ultimate weapon, and he seems to be putting better. So you gotta like him the way he's playing. Adam Scott has not won one of these, but he's come close a few times, top tens. He hasn't missed a cut in the last 5 in 4 of those top tens. He's got a low ball flight. He controls his ball. He can work it both ways. And it seems like in the open, putting is sort of neutralized. So you got to like Adam Scott when putting doesn't really matter. I think Jordan Spieth is coming in pretty under the radar. Everyone's talking about DJ and Jason Day. And now Rory with I don't know if you caught his comments today. People are talking about Rory. I think Spieth's flying under the radar. The guy just seems like the ultimate rat. Even when he doesn't have his B game, he just has a C game. He's in contention. I like Spieth if the conditions are bad and if the scores don't get too wild. If it gets up to 14, 15, 16 under par, I'm not sure he's hitting it well enough to win, but I think you see him stick around the whole week. And another big names I like, Brendan Grace. Maybe not known by the whole golf world yet, but the guy seems to show up in big tournaments. If he didn't hit it on the train tracks, he probably wins the U.S. Open last year. So I like Brendan Grace this week as well.
To DJ, do you think him winning a major has taken any monkey off his back, or is DJ the type of guy that just doesn't really care?
I used to think he wasn't the guy that really cared, but I think it had to, especially in the manner he won with the USGA, trying to steal it from him. I think that really got his juices going. I think you saw that with him winning his next start at the WGC. So I think he's going to win 4 or 5 more majors in the next 4 or 5 years.
Some of the bigger names that you would recommend staying away from?
Well, first one, Justin Rose. His best finish in the British Open is still that T4 back in '98 when he was an amateur. I love his game, but he's coming off that back injury. He played at Oakmont. He played okay, but hasn't played since. So I would avoid Rose until you get to see some more of him, just to see if he's over that injury. Obviously, Bubba, who knows with him? He doesn't like bad weather. He's got all the imagination and talent in the world. You would think he'd be successful at the British, but he just doesn't seem to embrace the conditions at all. So you got to think there's better spots for Bubba. And then I've always thought Ricky Fowler was going to pick off a British Open pretty early in his career. He seems like a very good bad weather player, but I don't know what is going on with him. He blew up the Masters. He was one of the favorites going into there. He miscut the Players, miscut at Oakmont. So big events ever since that season where he had 4 top 5s in the majors. He's just fallen off the face of the earth. So not really sure what's going on with Fowler at the moment.
That was going to be my question. Coming off the season with the 4 top 5 finishes in the majors, what has gone wrong with Ricky Fowler?
The only explanation I can think of is that he's putting too much pressure on himself, or the pressure being put on him, the expectations were just too high. He's really failed in the majors since that season. It looked like a foregone conclusion that he was going to win one soon after those top fives, but it just hasn't happened. And especially last year at Chambers Bay and this year at the Masters, he was one of the favorites and just completely imploded. He shot 80 in both of those tournaments, so my guess is expectations are just too high on him in some of these tournaments. So maybe this is a good week for him since no one's really talking about him.
This, of all the majors, this is probably the toughest to give the winning score because of the weather conditions, but your thoughts on a winning score?
Yeah, it's almost impossible. I'm going to go just based off of the preliminary forecast. I think it plays a little easier this week. I think Friday probably is a tough day. You won't see a ton of scores under par, but I think guys will be able to score if the wind is from the south, and it looks like that's what it's supposed to switch to. It's still going to be gusty, but I think it makes the back nine play much easier here. I'm going to go 13 under as the winning score.
Do you think this will be contested or a runaway winner?
I think it'll be contested. I think the course will play somewhat easy enough where 4 or 5 guys are there on Sunday.
You gave us a top 10 at the U.S. Open with Jason Day as he finished tied for 8th. Your pick for the British Open?
There's a lot of guys I like, and I was going through the past champions at Troon. There's some good ones, Arnie Palmy, but there's also the last 3 have been sort of guys who've had good careers, but not great. Justin Leonard, Mark Calcavecchia, Todd Hamilton. So I'm going to go with a guy I think is really good, but I don't see him getting to that superstar, one of the best in the world status. And I will go Brendan Grace to bang down that door.
Before we get into some of the odds and the prop bets, some other golf news to touch upon. You had mentioned the Olympics and Rory. Your thoughts on the comments he made today?
He's just lit everything on fire on that podium today, and we always knock athletes for not speaking their mind, and when they do and we don't agree with it, we kill them. So I'm going to give him a pass. I think it's fine for him to speak his mind like that. It was probably a little bit harsh, and when he's 45, 50 years old and he's at the end of his career, he'll probably change his stance on it. But, I don't really think Olympics is going to grow the game of golf that much, so I'm actually okay with his comments.
Are you okay with some of the top U.S. golfers backing out?
If I was qualified, I definitely wouldn't be going, so I have no problem with it.
Do you think this is going to be something that hangs around in the Olympics?
Well, I actually think golf is going to struggle to get into the 2020 Olympics now. I don't think this is a good look to have the best players all missing, obviously. I'm not sure what the solution is. I almost don't mind an all-amateur golf Olympics. My guess is since they're in Tokyo in 2020, you'll see a lot of the better players participate. Maybe not all, but I think you'll see a lot of these guys. Spieth already said if he makes the team, he's going to go to Tokyo. And so did Adam Scott. So I think it's Rio-specific, not actual golf in the Olympics.
And I would like to get your thoughts on the USGA with their 2 situations at the U.S. and U.S. Women's Open.
Well, the U.S. Open was just a complete debacle. You would have thought they learned a little bit, but they kind of made the same mistake. Again, not letting the players know immediately. It's kind of mind-boggling, actually, that they made the same mistake. And then, the president of the USGA, the lady calling Brittany Lang Bethany Lang in the press conference was pretty embarrassing. It's been a bad year for the USGA, I'll just say that.
I agree. You have any other golf notes before we get into the odds?
I'll just throw out some sleepers. I wrote down a couple with the odds, so when you bring those up, I'll give those. But just some generic sleepers. They're almost all Euros, but I think they'll all have good weeks. Martin Keimer, this is a golf course where you do not need to chip very well unless you're in a bunker, so you will see him putting from 50 to 100 yards away. Lee Westwood, good venue for him. Plotter. If this was a 3-round tournament and somehow there's a hurricane that comes in on Sunday and he's leading, I think he could win. Andy Sullivan, Graham McDowell, Francesco Molinari, Steve Stricker, Nicholas Colsarts. I really like those guys for DraftKings or whatever other games you like to play.
Yeah, you had mentioned McDowell. He's one I had written down who's seemed to have played well as of late. His odds are 90 to 1.
Yeah, I like that. I like the stab at him. Molinari, I saw at
125 to 1 I'm seeing.
Yeah, I like that. He's sort of a similar type player. McDowell probably has a better short game, but Molinari, he hits it really well. Mark Leishman, very, very good wind player. I think he's at 80 to 1. Same with Andy Sullivan, who has been red hot on the Euro Tour. He had his baby mama and baby mama's sister called him out on Twitter for cheating on them, and ever since then he's finished 3 straight top 10. So maybe he feels free or something. I like Andy Sullivan this week too.
4 off the cuff prop bets that I've seen. Just get your immediate thoughts on them. Wire to wire winner, plus 9,000 yes, minus 1,800 no.
I think actually the morning wave on Thursday, the weather looks great. You never know in the afternoons there, even if the forecast is for 65 and sunny, sometimes the afternoon can get dicey. So I think that wire-to-wire bet, it might be worth a buck or two on yes if someone goes and posts something stupid in the morning on Thursday.
Not great value on this, but hole in one, yes, minus 165, no, plus 135.
The postage stamp, number 8, I believe, is the postage stamp. One day I read that it's only going to play 90 yards. If that day is not windy, then you'll probably see multiple hole-in-ones on that hole. The green is tiny, and everything feeds to the center, so I don't think the odds there are good enough on either side to warrant that. I think there were 3 or 4 hole-in-ones back in 04 on various holes.
Playoff, yes, plus 180, no, minus 360.
Calc beat Norman in a playoff here. And
Hamilton was a playoff as well.
Todd Hamilton beat Ernie in a playoff, so that yes is a little enticing there.
Yeah, especially, I would agree, especially with a lot of the guys that I think it's going to be contested on Sunday as well, as you mentioned earlier. I don't think we're going to have a runaway.
If the weather forecast was worse, I'd be more inclined to say someone will probably hold on to a lead on Sunday, but I think it's going to be okay enough where you'll see a shootout on Sunday, like you said.
Now to the individual odds. Any value on DJ at 8 to 1?
Not for me, no. The only of the big guns, I think the value is on our boy Jordan Spieth.
10 to 1, I would agree there.
I think all of a sudden, and rightfully so, he won the U.S. Open, but Spieth all of a sudden is getting overlooked by a lot of people.
I like your selection of Brandon Grace, 22 to 1. A lot of value there.
Yeah, he was in position last week at the Scottish Open. After 36 holes, he was tied for 4th. Didn't have a great weekend. Made one bad swing on Saturday that kind of seemed to affect him, but hasn't missed a cut at the Open. Has been trending every year better and better. I think it's his time.
A couple other guys in the 20s. Sergio, 25 to 1. Stenson, 28 to 1. And as we mentioned, Ricky Fowler, 28 to 1. Any interest in those?
I really, really like Sergio. I think this is a great course fit. I don't like how many people are picking him, though. That scares me away. If there weren't so many people on him, I would love Sergio. He obviously hits it both ways, controls his trajectory, and has an unbelievable record in the Open. He probably should have won one or two of these at least.
One of my
I think there's value there.
favorite selections of the weekend is Sergio top 10. Yes, plus 210. No, minus 280. I think he finishes. I think he finishes in the top 10 as well.
I think he's in contention. I love his game for the British Open, obviously, or the Open, whatever you want to call it. And I do think he's going to win a major still eventually. I saw some stats earlier today about Phil and Tom Kite, and basically Sergio is at the same point in his career that they were before they won a major. So there's still plenty of time for him.
Justin Rose, 33-1. You talked about him a little bit earlier. Thoughts on Mickelson at 33-1?
I think there's a little bit of value on 33, especially. He closed out last week with a 66 in Scotland, so he's got some form. With Phil, it's always what strategy is he going to play with? When he won, he had that Frankenwood that he used everywhere at Muirfield. I'm not sure what he's going to hit off of a lot of tees. I haven't really heard much from Phil this week, so I'm a little scared by that, but you never know. He's hitting it well. He's playing well. So 33-1, I think, is a little high for him.
Unless there's an injury I don't know about, Oosthuizen at 45-1 has some value to me.
Totally agree. He's the St. Andrews course specialist. He loves that place. That's where he won and he finished second last year. But he's always notoriously a good bad weather player. And at those odds, he hits it almost as good as anybody. So why not?
A group of guys at 50-1. I'd like to get your thoughts on Danny Willett, who's one of them. Westwood, Keimer, and Zach Johnson are the other 50-1s.
Love those last three you mentioned. Zach has one of the better records. Obviously, he won last year, but he hasn't missed a cut in ages at the Open. Hits it straight, hits it low, hits it draw, everything you want. Really good short game. Bulldog, loves bad weather. Loves Zach Johnson this week to make the cut and post a good finish. Obviously, it's tough to win back-to-back Opens, so I doubt he wins again, but I like him to be there. Keimer already said loved his game for this venue specifically. Westwood, too. He's had a pretty good year, a little bit of resurgence since moving back to England. And who was the first one you said?
Danny Willett.
Oh, Danny Willett. Obviously won the Masters, but since then he has not played well. I don't love Willett this week. I like him in future Opens, but don't love him this week.
Patrick Reed at 55-1. Your thoughts?
I've always thought that this is a good major for Patrick Reed to win. Maybe it's the best for him. Windy, bad weather. He also hits a low draw. He kind of likes that fight. He was awesome in the Ryder Cup in very cold weather 2 falls ago. He's posting good results, but he's not posting those top finishes, so I don't know if his game is 100% there. I would like him if the rain comes down more than they're expecting, if that makes sense.
Schwartzel, Matsuyama, and Kuchar, 66-1.
Kuch and Matsuyama don't really do anything for me. Both hit it very well, but for some reason, neither one sticks out to me. I like Schwartzel going into the week. News broke this morning, though, and this is almost unheard of mid-season. He is putting a new set of clubs in the bag. He switched to PXG this morning, so all the Nike stuff he's been playing with for the last 10 years gone. PXG clubs in the bag this week.
Interesting note there.
It's almost unheard of mid-season. It almost always happens in the off-season, but we'll see.
2 interesting names. One you already mentioned in Andy Sullivan. He's 80-1. What about Matt Fitzpatrick at 75-1?
I liked that. He almost won the Nordic Masters a few weeks ago. He has since not putted very well. He's a very straight hitter. Not the biggest guy, but he keeps his ball in play. So if he can make a few putts, I like him to make the cut. It's just that I think he said in an interview with Rich Lerner this past week, he just hasn't made anything. So it all depends on that flat stick if he gets those putts to drop.
Group of guys at 80-1. You had already mentioned Leishman, which I do think has value as well. Snedeker, Chris Wood, Jim Furyk, Paul Casey, Russell Knox. and Alex Noren.
Noren won last week, so tough to expect him to follow that up with another good week. That's just how golf is sometimes. Of those names you mentioned, I think I kind of like Snedeker. I don't know why. Seems like on these flat, easy, slow greens, it reminds me of the West Coast, reminds me of Torrey Pines a little bit. People remember he won the Farmers Insurance there earlier this year in an absolute gale on Sunday. He posted 69 and waited. The wind was blowing 30 miles an hour the whole day, so he has proven that he can play in these conditions.
We're getting into the hundreds, so I'll just pick and choose as we go here. We already mentioned GMAC, who's 90-1. Colsart's 100-1. Your thoughts on Scott Piercy, who's played well of late at 100-1?
That's 100-1 to me seems that he should be more like 70-1, 65-1. He's played way too well in the biggest of events, U.S. Open, Bridgestone specifically. I think those odds are a little disrespectful to Scott Piercy.
Danny Lee, Ernie Els, and you had mentioned Molinari earlier. They're all 125-1.
I think 125 for all three is a phenomenal price. I think Danny Lee had a very good week last week in Scotland. I worry about the T-ball a little bit with him. He can get a little bit wild, but I still think it's great value. And Ernie Els is a name, over the hill, blah, blah, blah. He actually has improved his putting. He's in the top 50 in strokes gained putting on tour, which after the Masters, seeing that debacle is unbelievable. I actually think Ernie Els' name is on the leaderboard somewhere this week.
Also at 125-1, Jimmy Walker and Patty Harrington.
Patty Harrington wouldn't surprise me if he made some noise. He seems like a guy, the worse the weather is, it doesn't really matter where his game is. He just shows up. Jimmy Walker's a tough one to figure out. You'd think he'd be a good fit because he's from Texas, loves playing in the wind. But he just seems like a guy that every year he plays very good in the beginning of the year and just falls off the face of the earth after, say, April. So not really sure what to expect with Walker.
We talked earlier about guys overpowering the course. Two guys at 150-1, Gary Woodland and J.B. Holmes.
If you're giving me a pick between those two, Holmes cited an elbow injury last week. He shot 82 or 3 in the first round of the Scottish. He said his elbow felt terrible, so I would scratch him off. Woodland's an interesting one, though. He's played okay in some previous Opens, and like you said, if the wind isn't a huge factor, he's a guy that 7,100 yards, he could light that place up with that driver.
Two other guys, younger guys at 150-1, John Rahm and Matteo Manacero.
Manacero is an interesting one. Had a great week last week. He was the next great European player. I mean, he's only 23, but he completely lost his game in the last 2 years. Was down to under or over 1,000th in the world rankings or something like that. And it looks like he's on his way back. So good odds. Not sure I love him this week. Just, it's tough to put 2 weeks together when your game has been gone for a couple years. John Rahm's an interesting one. I think this kid's going to be a star. He tied for 4th in his pro debut at Congressional a couple weeks back. Not sure how much links golf experience he has, so that would worry me. But his game is ready for the PGA Tour right now, and next year I think you'll see him win as a full-blown rookie.
We're getting into the real long shots now. Steve Stricker, 200-1.
So Steve Stricker is currently 49 years old, but he is second in strokes gained putting and third on the tour in scrambling. This is a good course fit for him. Length is not an issue. Only if the north wind right into his face on the back nine, he might struggle a little bit with the length. But all in all, I like Stricker. He had a solid top 25 last week at the Scottish, and I think he can hang around on a course this short.
Monty at 250-1.
Monty is hitting the first ball. And look, he's done very well on the senior tour. He's bagged a couple majors on the senior tour. He still hits it almost as good as anybody. It's just around the greens he struggles, so it might not be as big of a factor this week. The problem with Monty here, his hometown event, I think he grew up on the same road that the Troon Lynx is on, so the pressure he's got to be feeling is just, even still, even though he's not expected to do anything, it's got to be out of control.
What about Andrew Beef Johnston at 300 to 1?
He's a good player. He's a character. I know some of the European writers / pundits weren't too happy of how he celebrated his maiden tour, European tour win earlier this year. He basically said in the trophy presentation that he was on his way to drink a 30-pack and get blasted. People didn't really like that, but I thought it was pretty refreshing.
Mechanic 400 to 1.
Would be a great story, and like Stricker, I think he's still got the game where he could compete on a course like this. He seems like the guy that the worse the conditions are, again, he might be better off. Just so it's not a birdie fest, I think he's better at making pars than he is making birdies. I actually wouldn't be shocked to see him make the weekend.
Real long shots. David Duval, 1,000 to 1.
I forgot he was playing. I saw him on the Golf Channel telecast earlier. I'm not sure when the last time he teed it up was. I know the Middle Evans brother, Sean Evans, the forgotten Molinari, would love to see a David Duval triumph this week.
And lastly, the defending Troon champion, Todd Hamilton's 1,000 to 1.
Todd has played okay on the senior tour. I would be shocked to see him rekindle any magic from 2004 this week.
I'm very disappointed that I have not seen Tommy Bjorn's name on this odds list. I assume he's not playing.
I would assume he's not playing as well. I don't think he qualified, but I did see him. I watched him last week in the Scottish, and he looked like he was playing pretty well. So
this is the one time a year.
That's also a disappointment for me, and I'm also disappointed to see him already accepting a vice captain position for the Ryder Cup. He should be playing.
This is the one time a year you see him on the first page every year.
I know. First round, Tommy Bjorn, 4 under. Just write it down.
With Spieth being your pick, would you take DJ, J-Day, Rory, Spieth at plus 150, the field minus 190?
Well, Brendan Grace is my pick, so I'll take the field.
Okay. I forgot you did say Brendan Grace.
I just like Spieth's value, and if you're giving me one of the big, whatever we're calling it now, the big 4, big 5, whatever, I'll take Spieth out of those guys.
Brandon Grace, 450 to 1, top 5.
I think he's going to win, so I love it.
He is plus 225 for a top 10.
That's probably my favorite one. I like that and the Sergio one a lot. What is, if you have it up, what is Adam Scott's top 10 number?
I will get that for you.
He makes top 10s look pretty easy at this major.
Plus 200.
There's value there, I think. I have the spreadsheet right in front of me. Adam Scott has top 10 at the Open Championship, I believe, the last 4 years, and he's top 25 at the last 6 years.
Ernie Els, plus 1,000, top 10.
I wish we were in the UK right now, because I think that's worthy of a minimum bet, whatever the minimum bet is. Plus 1,000 was ridiculous odds for that.
Let me see what the odds are here for top 20 Els plus 400.
I think I'd rather take the stab at the 1,000.
I agree.
He hasn't had the best record there since at this championship since winning at Lytham, but man, back in the day, he was a top 10 machine at the Open. And I believe in his last start, he finished 5th, so showing some form, too.
Tournament matchups for the whole tournament. Sergio Adam Scott. Any desire there?
No, those two are too even to me.
DJ Spieth.
I'll take Spieth.
Spieth is minus 105. No value
Fine,
there.
I like that.
McIlroy Day.
What's the odds?
Minus 120, minus 110 on McIlroy, minus 120 Day.
No thanks, not with that juice.
I'm going to go, let me get into the pluses. It's all the top guys right here.
You know me too well.
Matt Kuchar versus Paul Casey.
Huh.
Casey's even.
What's Kuchar?
Cooch is minus 130.
I think maybe a little Paul Casey dabbling there for me.
The next plus on the board would be Zach Johnson, Marty Keimer. Keimer's minus 140. Zach Johnson plus 110.
Wow, really? I do like myself some Marty Keimer this week, but if we're going just based on past results, I mean, defending champion getting no respect there. Zach Johnson hasn't missed a cut since Liverpool, which was 11 years ago. He's got top 20s in 5 of the last 6 Opens, so I'll take the plus with Zach there.
They don't have the first round head-to-head odds up yet. The next prop, will there be a double eagle? Yes, is plus 1,400.
No thanks.
Winning margin. Playoff, here's your options. Playoff, 1 stroke, 2 stroke, 3 strokes, 4 or more. All give you plus odds.
This is a hard one, but my gut says there's going to be a playoff.
Plus 275.
I don't, if we're breaking to 20 and we have $5 left to bet, I think that's not a bad one.
No, I agree. I like the picks. Brandon Grace, your pick. L's the top 10. Sergio, top 10.
What is, if you have it just handy, what is Zach Johnson, the top 10?
Let me get back to there.
Because that one's intriguing now that you brought all this up. I mean, we can have a million bets. I like so many things, but Keimer, top 10. Stuff, Molinari, maybe a backdoor top 10. But the disrespect of Zach Johnson, I think, might be able to make some money off of that.
Zach Johnson is plus 400, top 10.
Give it to me. They're really writing him off. He is coming in off of an 8th place finish and a 10th place finish. He has 4 top 10s at the Open in his last 5 appearances, so he hasn't missed a cut in a decade. So give me Zach Johnson plus 400.
I like those selections. Anything else for the Open or golf?
Nope. Enjoy the coverage. I think it's one of the best, certainly better than the PGA, and coverage-wise, it's probably the best of the year.
Now the fun begins. We haven't talked in a while about the NBA.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what has gone on in the last 4 weeks in the association.
Well, we haven't talked since the finals have ended, but, other than giving extraordinary props to LeBron for coming back in those 3 games and the performances he had, I don't really know what else to say about it.
Final specific, like you said, I don't think you can give enough credit to LeBron. Kyrie made a big shot, but that block by LeBron, I think, won them a championship. I think down 3-1 to the record-setting, quote-unquote, best team of all time in some people's minds. Kyrie had a great series, but that's the only guy really that you can count on. I think this ring is greater than the other 2 you won combined.
No doubt. The only other thing I'll say is Kerr, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson certainly deserve some of the blame. But to me, it all comes down to Livingston, Iguodala, and Spates. In the first 5 games, they shot over 50% from the field. Or excuse me, the first 4 games. The last 3, they shot 22%.
Yeah, the bench didn't show up, and that's been the key to their team the whole year. Like you said, I think their blame can go around anywhere. I would put a little more blame on Steph. People thought he was the best player in the league by a lot. I think he got fairly exposed in this series, that he really is just a scorer. And if his outside shot is not falling, I'm not really sure what he is.
I don't
help anywhere else on the floor.
I know that there was injury talk going on during the Thunder series about Steph. I don't think that the injury, I think he was over the injury. I think he was just worn down.
I agree. I don't think he was hurt. I think he was tired. I think the physical nature that the NBA allowed the Cavs to play, which rightfully so, is the finals, wore him down quicker than he usually does. So,
Yeah, they played him. I know he sat out a lot of fourth quarters, but they played till the end to get 73, and then the Thunder and Cavs just beat him up.
Yeah, and, not much credit to Kevin Love for the playoffs as a whole, but credit to Kevin Love for a couple defensive stops on Steph, specifically late in games in the finals. Steph couldn't get a shot off against Kevin Love, which shows me that you are exactly right with the fatigue.
Well, we'll stay on the topic of the Warriors. Your thoughts on Kevin Durant?
That's my thought about it. I know he's a free agent. You can do what you want, but just I think any team but that team is who you go to.
I completely agree. I have no problem with him leaving OKC. For years we've talked about him and Russell Westbrook late in games. Can they coexist? Can they work? Maybe he was just sick of Westbrook playing with him. Maybe he was sick of OKC. I could live with him leaving OKC, even though they may have the best odds to win it if he stays. But to go to Golden State really rubs me the wrong way.
Perfectly said. I can't stand and I hate the comparisons to LeBron leaving. I think it's totally different. LeBron was leaving a dumpster fire of a roster, and he went to a team with 2 All-Stars, but one was coming from Toronto, so sort of unproven. One was a perennial All-Star, but totally different than going to a record-setting, huge favorite team. It's just a huge cop-out to me as a competitor, and just like you said, any other team, I can't see how this is going to not tarnish his legacy a little bit.
I saw the initial over-under win total set at 67.5 for the Warriors.
I need to see how they fill out their roster, but my initial thought is it's impossible for teams to do that twice in a row, but I think adding someone like that really, you could shave some minutes to your stars pretty easily here and there, so I would go over. I wouldn't be shocked if they hit the 70-win mark again.
One free agent signing that is kind of going under the radar to me just because of the name is Dwayne Wade going to Chicago. To me, he's a top 3, top 4 shooting guard of all time.
I think I agree. I think he's underrated all the time, especially in big games. He's phenomenal. I know he's taken some discounts in the past, and he wants to recoup that money, deservedly so. But I think this is probably signaling the end of his career.
Yeah, I thought the same. I thought he deserved to get paid in Miami for what he did, but I also don't blame Pat Riley for not wanting to pay him. And I agree, he's at the end of his career. And obviously Durant's taking the headlines. I was just surprised that the Wade going to Chicago didn't get more press.
Perfectly said. I think it's a really good move by Pat Riley not to give him money. I think it would have set the franchise back like the Lakers with Kobe's last contract. So I think it's a good move for the Heat in the future. I also don't blame Dwayne Wade for wanting that money. I think that it really shows there was some bad blood between him and Riley, that he would leave Miami after all they've been through. You would think he would have been a lifer there, but I think it shows there was a little more going on than we've even heard about.
We exchanged texts on the Heat moving forward, and I think we both agreed they're in a great position with Whiteside, Winslow, and Dragic. and it shouldn't be too hard to lure a free agent to Miami.
No, I haven't seen the finalized deal. I am shocked that they matched Tyler Johnson's 4 for $50 contract. He's looks like a nice young player, but Brooklyn has signed him to that ridiculous deal. He's more of a 3 for $30 guy, max, something like that. And it looks like Miami is going to match it. And I thought Miami, after letting Wade go, would allow Johnson to sign with Brooklyn and then explore moving Dragic in his pretty hefty contract. It's not huge, but 5 for $90 is pretty big. And maybe sort of tank the season and get a lottery pick and then lure a huge free agent next year. I thought they were going to set up for 2018, but it doesn't look to be that way.
Going back to the Bulls, your thoughts on Rajon Rondo going there?
I really hate how the Bulls are constructed. They'll probably win some games because they have some nice individual pieces, but the backcourt of Rondo and Wade, I mean, you might as well just pack in his own defense all around the key and let him shoot jumpers because they're not going to make anything. I feel bad for Jimmy Butler because I think he's about to enter his prime, and I really, really like his game. I wish he would force a trade to Boston or something like that because I don't like him now with Wade and Rondo.
I'm glad you brought that up. Could you see Butler mid-season at the deadline asking out and Hoiberg's job also being in jeopardy?
I think you hit it right there. I think Hoiberg, there'll be some rumblings, and I think that will be the catalyst for Butler and his people to say, we need to get out of here. I think you have it right there.
Speaking of another team that's made some interesting moves, the New York Knicks bring in Derrick Rose, Jakeem Noah, Lance Thomas, Brandon Jennings, and Courtney Lee.
It's kind of just a mishmash of players there. People killed him for the Rose move. I actually don't mind it. It's just a one-year rental. It's just money. They got to spend it, so why not see what he has to offer? I doubt they re-sign him unless he has a great year. Didn't love the Courtney Lee signing. I just think he's a 10th guy off the bench, basically. They overpaid for Joakim Noah. Love Noah when he's healthy. Love what he does on defense, but he doesn't provide anything on offense, and he's frequently injured now. So
if Noah's
trying to be relevant, but I don't love what they did.
I mean, I can't bet that Noah and Rose are going to stay healthy, but if they do, the starting five is not terrible on paper with Noah, Porzingis, Carmelo, Rose, and Brandon Jennings.
It's not terrible on the surface, especially name-wise. I really struggle to see how they... Obviously, Melo will get the ball, but it seems to be a lot of standing and one-on-one with those guys. Porzingis is really the only guy that provides an outside threat. I don't know. I don't see a shooter in that group. I see a lot of guys that need the ball to do anything, which I don't want to see. I don't want to see 5 guys that have to have the ball in their hands to make something happen.
Thoughts on Horford going to Boston?
Well, he spurned my bullets, so I'm not too pleased about it. I really thought we had a chance to get him. I thought it would have been a nice addition with Wall. But I love the addition for Boston. I think he's a really good fit there. He can stretch the floor a little bit for a 4 guy. If they want to go small, he can play the 5. I think it's a really good move for Boston, especially since they didn't get what they wanted in the draft or in Durant.
Speaking of your bullets, any indication why they pulled out of the Durant sweepstakes?
From what I read and from some of the local radio guys here, Durant did not want to come home and put that type of pressure on himself or the city, the franchise, etc. So he eliminated them early on.
Could you see him going to Golden State, winning 1 or 2, and then coming home?
That's interesting. That was my first thought, especially when I was looking through Golden State's contracts. They're going to have a tough time building depth if they re-sign him and Curry in 2 years or next year. They can make it work for 2 years, but if he wins, let's say they win back-to-back titles, and then he opts out, wouldn't be shocked if that's what he did. Sort of LeBron going to Miami and coming back to Cleveland.
From what I saw, next year could be even crazier, free agency wise. A lot of big names back on the market, but from what I read, the salary cap is not going to be as high as the GMs initially thought.
That puts the screws to some of these teams, especially Golden State. Now, they're going to get lucky with the bird rights to Curry, but long term, if they're thinking like their management, I assume, likes to do, 3-4 years down the line, I don't see how they build any type of roster minus the starting five with, unless Curry takes another pay cut. I don't know, maybe he does. I don't know, but I don't see how they do it.
Yeah, I would agree. It will be interesting to see how Golden State moves forward.
I believe Klay Thompson is up in 2018 again, and I don't see him taking the 15 that he's making now. So I'm not sure how they do it.
Not only that, with Durant, Curry, and Draymond Green, is there going to be enough basketballs to make Klay Thompson happy?
Excellent point. I think Klay is the odd man out there. He's a great player, but personality-wise, ego-wise, I think he's the odd man out. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's the one that in 2018 is gone.
Yeah, you can make the argument Curry and Durant could always take a pay cut because of their sneaker deals. Thompson doesn't appear to me to have a huge deal elsewhere.
I could be wrong about this, but I thought he was signed to either a Korean or a Chinese shoe company.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Back to your Bullets. Your thoughts on the Brad Beal contract?
They were forced into that. They don't really have another option. You take a guy that high in the draft and he shows flashes, especially in the playoffs last year. He had a couple 35-point games. They had to do it. They didn't have any other option. Just got to pray he stays healthy and takes the next step.
I know that we both hate him. We both rip him. But I actually thought Dwight Howard to the Bullets would have been interesting for 2 or 3 years.
Especially in the East, yes.
I
I don't think you can succeed with that type of player in the West, but in the East, I think he would have been really good with a point guard like Wall.
I was just going to say that. You go back and look at all the point guards he's had. I think Wall, obviously Wall is going to be the best, or would be the best, but now that he's in Atlanta, Schroeder's probably the best at getting him involved that he's ever had. Orlando, he had...
I agree. And he seems to me he's had a lot of score-first point guards, which is clearly a detriment to his style of game. He needs someone to get him the ball. When he's in a post position, he can't really create that position himself. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the Lakers had a terrible situation, and with Houston, he had Patrick Beverly and Harden controlling the ball.
Right. I don't think Harden's ever thrown a ball into the post in his life.
So how do you like what the Hawks have done with him? They re-signed Bazemore. They have Millsap and Schroeder now the full-time point guard.
I think they're a playoff team. I like Schroeder's skill set. He's sort of out of control, especially in big situations. He's shown in the past that he does not have the capacity yet to slow the game down. But, like you said, I kind of like their collection of talent that they're building.
Any surprise at the free agents that stayed with their teams? Mike Conley, DeMar DeRozan, Andre Drummond, Nicholas Batum, and Whiteside.
I think the one that was surprising was Whiteside. I thought he would leave, and maybe he knew something with Wade that we didn't, or maybe he just wanted the most money he could make. I thought he would leave. The only other guy that maybe I thought could leave would have been DeRozan, but they've got a pretty solid foundation there, and he would have gotten burned pretty bad, I think, by that city if he had left. So, none of the other ones really surprised me.
Gasol to the Spurs. Does he have anything left?
I thought he actually played fairly well last year. I do think he has something left. I know he's old. I think he's 34, 35, maybe. But they'll limit his minutes. I think they knew Duncan was going to retire, and I think he is sort of Duncan-esque where he can still score, give you some minutes on the defensive end, and rebound, which is what Duncan did for them, especially last year, not this past season, the year before. I think they're just basically putting Gasol in right as a filler for Duncan. which I like. I think they're similar players.
When the Warriors got Durant, it was obvious they weren't going to match Harry Barnes. Is the Mavericks a good fit for him?
I don't know. I don't. He played so bad, especially in the finals. We both always liked him as a player. We liked him this season. He had a good season. I don't know. Dallas is weird to me. It seemed like they settled for a lot of players.
I don't even know how to ask this politely, but what the hell were the Orlando Magic doing this offseason?
I know their GM is sort of young, so maybe he thinks he's playing NBA 2K16 or something, but they got absolutely ripped off in that Oladipo trade. And I don't know what they're doing. I'm not sure what their vision is for their team at all. Especially if you go back to last season, mid-season, the trade with the Pistons, too, I thought they got ripped off. So,
yeah,
they lost their best players. I'm not sure what they're doing.
Yeah, they had Tobias Harris on a manageable contract. They let Oladipo go, who may have been their best player. I liked the draft pick of Sabonis. They trade him with Oladipo to the Thunder. And now they signed Biyombo. They have Biyombo, Vucevic, and Serge Ibaka.
And on the surface, that's a pretty good collection of bigs. But when those are your three best players, I really don't understand what they're... Maybe they're going to try to play games in the 50s. I have no idea.
Going back to the Thunder, what are your thoughts on them moving forward without Durant?
I actually still like their roster. I think they're a bottom seed, playoff seed in the West still. You know Westbrook's going to try to average 40 a game. They lose Durant, they lose Waiters. I believe Waiters is going to leave. They lose Ibaka, which is probably addition by subtraction. But Oladipo, Westbrook in the backcourt. And then you have Steven Adams, who really emerged. Enes Kanter will get more minutes now. Both of those guys I really like. I still think they can be a 6, 7, 8 seed in the West. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Russell Westbrook has to be the favorite for MVP going into the year with what he's going to do.
Yeah.
I think the over-under for the first matchup against the Warriors for points has to be 74. But I agree. I like their
shots. That's what I want to know.
I just wish they had a shooter that could extend the floor a little bit.
Totally agree. I don't see that with Roberson. Sabonis, like you said, was a good pick, but there's kind of a log jam at center now with Sabonis, Collison, Kanter, Adams. Singler doesn't really play. Mitch McGary, another center. Don't love. Foy's a nice bench guy, give you some points off the bench, but don't love him. So I agree with you. I wish they had a guy like J.J. Redick. I think Redick would fit in on that team perfectly, actually.
I'm glad you brought up Redick. The Clippers, it seemed to me they had to go one way or the other this offseason, and they stayed status quo. Are they trying to make one more run at it, or did they just not have a move to make?
The move for them to make, I thought, was to move Blake Griffin. I guess
Agreed.
Maybe they're waiting to do that. I've already seen a couple of rumors that Russ Westbrook would like to see Blake Griffin come to Oklahoma City. Not sure really what you could offer because the Clippers are already big at center. They got Stone in the draft, and they already have DeAndre, and that's where the Thunder have a pile of assets. So I'm not really sure what the Thunder would offer there. But the Clippers got bigger and slower. I guess they're going to try to make one more run. I don't really see it. I would not be shocked if Chris Paul... I guess it depends on the first half of this season, but I would have thought Chris Paul, Kyrie Irving trade would be explored this coming year.
The one team that really flew under the radar, and I think I like what they did this offseason. I don't know if they have enough to compete in the West, but I like what the Blazers did, getting Evan Turner, re-signing Crabbe.
I love the Blazers, you know that. They re-signed Myers Leonard as well. I believe they drafted Jake Layman from Maryland, a guy who I always thought would be a better NBA player than he was in college. They pay crap, but man, he can shoot it, and he's a pretty lengthy wing defender. So I think you had to do that. But I agree. I really like the direction they're going, and they took a flyer on a couple guys. Shabazz Napier from UConn. They signed him to a minimum deal. So see what if he can live up to anything. But they re-signed their own, and they're gonna build with the core they got because you're not going to lure a free agent there, really.
You mentioned the draft. Your quick thoughts on that. Give me your favorite picks.
This is going to sound cliche, but Ben Simmons to the Sixers is my favorite pick. I think he's a star. I think he's going to get more aggressive with time, but we've already seen glimpses of what he can do passing the ball and rebounding the ball. A couple other ones I like. Chris Dunn to the Wolves. I think he's going to be a star. Buddy Hield to the Pelicans. Perfect fit with Anthony Davis. And your boy Bembry to the Hawks I really liked. I think he kind of fits that team. They need some toughness, and I think he brings that.
Picks that made you scratch your head.
Jaylen Brown to Boston. He's got some upside, but I think they were just so upset with what was going on. They took him. I don't love it. Chris to the Suns, boomer bust pick. I'm not sure that's really what the Phoenix Suns need right now. And this is probably too early to say, but I don't know, man. I just don't see the Brandon Ingram love. He just seems like he's going to be one of those guys in the NBA, like Jonathan Bender, who looks the part and he'll have those games, but is just a super inefficient player that will average 17 points on 20 shots, basically.
I hate to judge him after one summer league game, but I watched him play against the Sixers the other night, and I couldn't be happier the Sixers have Simmons, because even if Simmons doesn't develop a shot, which I believe he will, he's still going to affect the game. He could defend, he could rebound, he's going to pass the ball. I don't know what Ingram does if he can't make shots.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was trying to say. He just looks like the only thing he can do is score, and he scores very inefficiently. He needs a lot of shots to do it. I don't like his body for the league either. I know Durant and Garnett have made it as a skinny guy, but I don't know. There's something about him that just doesn't look right to me.
The other pick that made me scratch my head, I know it probably was an 8-person draft, but the Raptors taking Poeltl at 9. I thought they could have got somebody else or at least traded the pick for more value.
I agree. I just made the point with Chris to Phoenix as a boomer bust that I didn't think Phoenix was in a position to do that. I would have liked to see Toronto take a guy with upside instead of, a kind of a safe guy that has no ceiling.
You mentioned Bembry to the Hawks. He's a guy later in the draft I liked that I think will contribute and make a difference. Any other picks later in the draft that you liked?
I have two, and I'll preface this by saying I went to the second round just to make it a little more interesting. I really like Georges Niang to the Pacers. Thought he was an underrated college player at Iowa State. Like we were just talking about with Ingram, what he doesn't do. Niang really affects the game defensively, and he's a very good passer. He can also shoot it, so as a close to 7-footer, I like that. And one of my favorite players in the draft, he's kind of going through a bad situation with the position he plays, the logjam that Boston already has, but love Demetrius Jackson's game.
Yeah, I like those two, especially Jang to the Pacers. I thought they quietly had a really good offseason.
I totally agree. They really have built that roster. Now, not flashy names, but Teague, Al Jefferson, and bringing in Niang. I think they've really given Paul George some decent help, finally.
The one I did have written down late in the first round was the point guard the Spurs took. Was it Dejounte Murray?
Yes. Love that kid's athleticism. Huge point guard, too.
6'5". Yep.
Perfect situation for him to go to. He's probably a top 10 talent, but not real proven and does not have a steady jump shot. But I don't doubt for a second that in 5 years he'll be the steal of the draft, like you said.
Yeah, especially he should get a lot of playing time with probably trying to limit Parker's minutes somewhat this next year.
Yes, it's a perfect situation for him. He'll get to learn for a year or two.
That's all I have for the NBA. You have anything else?
Nope. That is all my notes for the NBA, sadly.
So we'll probably be talking a lot moving forward. We got the PGA Championship coming up next. And then our favorite topic, football.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll hit on the Olympics a little bit. We'll see what happens. There's still some decent players going, especially for America. Patrick Reed, Ricky Fowler committed. So we'll still hit on that. PGA will follow that right up quickly. And then I'm sure we'll get into some over-under season totals, who our wagons are, and the NFL in total.
But yeah, we're only about 40 days away from college football kicking off.
And college football. Forgot about that one, too.
All right, good talking to you. Great stuff by you today.
All right, buddy. Great job.
All right, see you.
See ya.